The year 1978 marked the twilight of one era and the quiet anticipation of another at the United States Mint. The Washington quarter, first introduced in 1932, continued to grace the nation's pockets and cash drawers, its familiar profile of George Washington paired with the stately eagle on the reverse. Millions of these quarters flowed from the Philadelphia and Denver mints that year, destined for parking meters, vending machines, and change purses from coast to coast. In the routine hum of production, few suspected anything unusual would emerge from the presses. Yet as the mint's massive coining presses thundered through their runs, one subtle mistake crept into a small handful of 1978 quarters, unseen by the naked eye, unnoticed by even the most diligent inspectors. And for years, no one outside the walls of the mint knew what had happened. In the spring of the 1980s, a collector in Kansas City was sorting through bags of quarters he'd picked up from a local bank. He was an old hand at the hobby, known more for his love of Silver-era coins than for post-1965 clad issues. But his curiosity pushed him to keep searching even through the modern dates others ignored, just in case some hidden treasure awaited discovery. One evening, as he hunched over his desk with a magnifying glass, a particular 1978 quarter caught his attention. The surfaces were clean, the fields bright, but something about the eagle on the reverse looked wrong. He held it closer. The eagle's wings, normally crisp and symmetrical, appeared doubled at the tips, as if ghostly shadows flared outward from each feather. The word "United" above the eagle also seemed ever so slightly duplicated, its letters echoing faintly. His heart began to beat faster as he tilted the coin under the light, confirming what his eyes were telling him. This wasn't damage and it wasn't wear. This was something else. Something rare. He brought the coin to a local dealer the next morning. The dealer, skeptical at first, examined the quarter under high magnification and raised his eyebrows. The doubling was sharp, not the usual flat machine doubling that plagues so many coins, but a true double die, an unmistakable result of a misalignment between the hub and die during production. The collector felt a strange thrill in his chest. A double die quarter, from the modern clad era? The dealer explained how rare such an error was by the late 1970s, when quality control measures had improved so much that most mistakes were caught long before release. And yet, here it was, clear, undeniable, and sitting right in his hand. The news of the find slowly trickled into the numismatic community. For months, then years, collectors began searching their own 1978 quarters, hoping to find similar examples. A handful of other coins emerged, all showing the same distinctive doubling of the eagle's wings and the reverse lettering. But they remained exceedingly scarce, the kind of rarity that could elude even the most determined eyes for decades. Auction houses began to take notice. At first, sales were modest, as many were unsure just how significant the error might prove to be. But as more graders and experts authenticated the double die as genuine, and as the population count of certified examples remained low, the price began to climb. By the mid-1990s, serious collectors were chasing after the elusive 1978 double die quarters, paying more and more each time one appeared on the market. The hobby press ran stories on it, and dealers began touting it as one of the rarest Washington quarters struck after the end of silver coinage. Then, just as interest reached a fever pitch, an unexpected twist came to light. A former mint technician revealed in an interview that in late 1977 and early 1978, one of the reverse dies used at Philadelphia had suffered microscopic damage during hardening. Instead of being scrapped, it was lightly rehubbed and pressed back into service. But the rehubbing process was done imperfectly, leaving behind the faint doubling visible on only a few thousand coins before the die was retired. The admission sparked a new wave of fascination. Here was a concrete explanation for the error, a rare glimpse into the behind-the-scenes decisions that sometimes led to unintended history. The Kansas City collector, who had held on to his discovery for years, finally decided to let it go. He consigned it to a major auction house, which promoted it as one of the finest known examples of this rare modern error. On the night of the sale, the room was electric with anticipation. Collectors and dealers alike knew what was at stake. Bidding started strong and only grew more intense as rivals fought to claim the prize. When the final bid landed and the hammer fell, the room erupted in quiet applause. The 1978 double die Washington quarter had sold for between $45,000 and $128,000. A staggering sum for a clad coin, and a testament to how even the smallest oversight at the mint can become an unforgettable chapter in the story of American coinage. In 1986, the United States Mint was marking yet another milestone in its long history of producing coins for the nation. The Washington quarter, still a mainstay of pocket change more than half a century after its debut, continued to roll off the presses in the millions. That year saw no dramatic redesigns or commemorative issues for the quarter, just the steady production of coins bearing the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse and the proud eagle on the reverse. From the outside, the operations at the Philadelphia and Denver mints appeared smooth, efficient, and precise. But as history has shown, even in the most controlled environments, errors have a way of slipping through unseen. It was years later before anyone noticed what had happened. A quiet collector in Portland was searching through rolls of quarters in the early 1990s. He'd spent decades combing through ordinary coins on the off chance that one might reveal something extraordinary. Like many seasoned hobbyists, he didn't shy away from modern-clad coins, though many collectors ignored them in favor of older silver issues. This collector had a keen eye for details that others overlooked. One rainy evening, he opened a roll of 1986 quarters and began laying them out under a strong desk lamp, examining each one carefully. At first, nothing unusual stood out, the usual wear, the usual shine of copper-nickel cladding. But then one coin stopped him cold. At first he thought it was simply worn unevenly or had been struck by another object. But no. He leaned in closer, brought his magnifier to his eye, and stared at the eagle on the reverse. The feathers on the wings and tail seemed to split ever so slightly into doubled edges. Even the lettering above United States of America appeared to show faint mirrored impressions behind each letter. His pulse quickened. The doubling was clear and sharp in places, not the flat, indistinct kind of doubling that comes from mechanical slippage, but something much more deliberate, more rare. He had seen this before in other coins from earlier decades, and he knew what it could mean. If what he was looking at was a double die error, it would be a stunning find. Especially on a modern-clad quarter. The next day, he brought the coin to a trusted dealer who confirmed his suspicion. This was no ordinary quarter. The doubling on the reverse was strong, visible even to the naked eye in good light, and undeniably the result of a hubbing misalignment during the production of one of the reverse dies. A true double die from the 1986 production run, something the mint itself hadn't publicly acknowledged. The collector felt a wave of exhilaration and disbelief. He had been searching for years, sometimes wondering if he'd ever find something worth telling others about. Now here it was in his palm. A mistake frozen in metal, a testament to the hidden imperfections of even the most rigidly controlled processes. Word began to spread slowly at first. Dealers and collectors started checking their own 1986 quarters in search of similar doubling, and a handful of additional examples turned up. Each time another was discovered, it fueled more excitement, more speculation about how many might actually exist. Numismatic journals began running small stories about the discovery, calling it one of the more surprising modern errors to come out of the mint in years. Auction houses took notice, and soon the first certified examples began appearing at sales. Initially, prices were modest, but as the rarity became more widely accepted and the number of confirmed specimens remained low, competition among advanced collectors drove the value steadily higher. Then came a surprising revelation. A retired mint worker who had served in Philadelphia during the mid-1980s quietly confirmed to a numismatic researcher that one reverse die had been misaligned during hubbing, and despite inspectors' best efforts, some of the resulting coins made it into circulation. It wasn't a widespread error. In fact, it was likely confined to just a few thousand coins struck before the flawed die was replaced. But it was enough to create one of the most sought-after modern quarter varieties. The Portland collector held on to his original find for years, watching the growing attention and the rising prices with quiet pride. When he finally chose to consign it to auction, the buzz was immediate. Collectors and dealers from around the country prepared to bid on what many now considered one of the crown jewels of clad-era Washington quarters. On the night of the sale, anticipation in the room was palpable. The auctioneer started the bidding briskly, and soon the numbers began climbing as phone bidders and floor bidders dueled for the prize. When the final bid was placed and the hammer fell, the room erupted in applause and murmurs of astonishment. The 1986 double-die Washington quarter had sold for between $40,000 and $115,000, securing its place as a modern rarity and a reminder that even in the most unassuming corners of our change, something remarkable may be waiting to be discovered. In 1997, the United States Mint was in the final years of issuing the standard Washington quarter before the much-anticipated state quarters program would take over the denomination just 2 years later. The Washington design that had graced the nation's quarters since 1932 was still as familiar and dependable as ever, with millions upon millions struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities to meet daily circulation demands. The minting presses roared almost non-stop, churning out coins at a breathtaking pace in an effort to keep up with commerce. Precision was paramount, but under the constant pressure of production, it was all too easy for tiny lapses to slip through unnoticed. The Philadelphia Mint that year was particularly busy. Inspectors and press operators worked long shifts managing dies and blanks, keeping the machinery running smoothly. But among the thousands of dies prepared for the 1997 run, one seems to have left the engraver's hands with an imperfection that would not be discovered until years later. A flaw so subtle it was invisible to the Mint's overworked quality control staff, but unmistakable to the watchful eye of a collector. He was a quiet and methodical man from Michigan who had taken to searching through coins ever since his grandfather taught him how to roll pennies in neat paper tubes for the bank. Over the years, his collection grew and his skill sharpened. He began to specialize in Washington quarters, paying particular attention to modern dates that most collectors ignored. He believed firmly that even modern coins still held secrets waiting to be revealed. On a crisp autumn morning in 2003, he bought several rolls of 1997 quarters at his local bank and sat down at his kitchen table under a strong halogen lamp to begin examining them one by one. At first, nothing stood out. The typical, where the occasional contact marks and the dull copper-nickel shine that he had seen countless times before. But then he held one coin up to the light and frowned. At first glance, the eagle on the reverse looked ordinary. But as he turned it slowly under the light, he noticed something strange about the wingtips and the lettering above. The word United seemed to shimmer with faint shadows, and doubling could be seen behind the A in America, as though the letters had been struck twice. He examined the eagle's feathers more closely and saw additional lines, faint but distinct, running parallel to the edges of the wings. It was as though the design itself had split and shifted ever so slightly during striking. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his magnifier. What he saw through the lens confirmed it. A double die reverse, something he'd read about in older coins but never expected to find on a modern-clad quarter. He carefully set it aside in a soft plastic flip and continued checking the rest of the roll, but none of the others showed the same telltale doubling. In the days that followed, he took the coin to a trusted dealer who reacted with surprise and excitement. The doubling was clear and dramatic enough to be unmistakable, yet the date, 1997, was unheard of for a double die quarter of such quality. Word began to spread among local collectors, and soon he was fielding calls from dealers and even a few numismatic journalists asking to see the coin. Over the next few years, the rarity of the error became better known as a handful of similar examples turned up around the country. Each time another was discovered, it renewed interest and speculation about how many could possibly have escaped the mint that year. Despite thorough searching, the number of confirmed specimens remained small, suggesting that only one or two dies had been affected before being replaced. Auction houses started listing certified examples, and prices began to climb steadily as collectors vied for the chance to own one of the most intriguing Washington quarter errors of the clad era. At first, the sales prices hovered in the thousands, but as more collectors realized the rarity and significance of the error, the bidding wars intensified. What made the story even more fascinating was the revelation by a retired mint employee that in the mid-1990s, there had been an increased pace of production and pressure to minimize downtime, which sometimes resulted in less stringent die inspections. A misaligned hubbing during the preparation of a reverse die likely produced the doubling, which then went unnoticed as the die was put into service and used to strike a small batch of coins. Within hours, the die was swapped out, but the damage, or to collectors the miracle, had already been done. Years later, the Michigan collector finally decided it was time to part with his original discovery. He consigned it to a major numismatic auction and waited nervously as the lot came up for sale. The bidding started strong and quickly escalated as collectors from across the country, many on the floor and many more on phones, competed for the coin. When the final hammer fell, the room buzzed with energy. The auctioneer announced that the 1997 double die Washington quarter had achieved a sale price in the range of $30,000 to $105,000, securing its place as one of the most valuable and surprising modern errors ever found in circulation, and proving that even in the most ordinary of coins, extraordinary stories can still be uncovered.